Having obtained at least some of the reagents she was sent for, Kalana Heartwale falls back to the rear guard and makes her way, skirting the swamp, back to the ships. The wounded slow the party, but it simply would not do to leave those injured elves to the butchery of those barbaric saurians. Needs must. Unfortunately, this gives that Gecko Priest time to rally his scaled brethren, cross that ghastly mire, and head off our shamed sorceress. So, break through the saurian line to safety, protect the wounded, or somehow do both. What will she do? The forces of the Elves are led once again by Kalana Heartwale, seeking redemption. She is a High Elven mage. She leads 2 units of 3 warriors, 4 Elven elite with great swords, one of whom is a sergeant, and 4 Shadow Brothers. The Saurian forces seeking to cut the Elves off and recover their stolen relics are led by the Gecko Priest Brassk. He leads 2 units of 3 geckos with javelins, jungle toxins, and camouflage paint, a further unit of 3 geckos with blowpipes and camouflage paint, and 5 Saurian warriors. Using one-page rules, Age of Fantasy skirmish, we will be playing a breakthrough scenario. The Elves are deployed in a tight group, with scouts ready to take up positions ahead of the main force, and they've deployed around their wounded, the objective marker. They seek to capture the Saurian objective, their passage back to the ships. The Saurians have deployed spread across the line of march to block the Elves. Nimble geckos in the swamp, and fearsome Saurian warriors on the firm ground. They seek to block the Elves' advance, and capture the wounded and stolen reagents. Whoever secures the most objectives will be the winner. After deployment, the Elven Shadow Brothers may advance up to 12 inches, ignoring terrain because they have the Scout special rule. They advance to screen the main force and will be the first to uncover the Saurian attack. I'm going to roll to see who will take the first turn. Black for the Elves, red for the Saurians, and the Saurians will take it with a 4. The blowpipe geckos dart forward through the swamp, blasting darts towards the approaching Elven Scout. With quality 5+, they'll require 6s to hit the stealthy Shadow Brother. 2 darts go wide, but the third pierces his woodland tunic, and deadly jungle toxins rack the elf's body. He has time to cry out a warning before falling beneath the surface. Alerted by his companion's cry, a Shadow Brother ducks back and sends a shaft towards the polished bronze and iridescent feather-clad priest. The arrow flies true, and Brassk's arcane wards flare. He requires 6s to completely avoid the arrow. Nevertheless, the wards deflect the lung shot to the side where it merely creases his ribs. Brassk hisses in pain. It'll take more than a single arrow to kill the priest. Spurred into action, he rushes forward, ducking behind the bole of a tree. He intones words of power and lobs a serpent egg at the Shadow Brother on the very edge of his range. The egg explodes in serpentine whirls of power, causing 4 automatic hits. The Shadow Brother ducks and rolls, having avoided the worst of the blast with 2 6s, but he does not rise again. Spotting the oncoming geckos, the Shadow Brother on the shore looses a panicked shot, requiring 3+, but the arrow goes wide, a poor shot from an elf. Taking advantage of the panicked elf fumbling for a new arrow, the geckos hop forward and lob javelins. 2 are well short of their target and bury themselves on the sodden ground, while the third is wide and lands in the swamp. A group of elven warriors rush up, taking a position between 2 trees.
Swift as the wind.
And a Saurian warrior tears down the hill towards the elven flank. An elven elite moves up to support the commoner warriors, and the remaining Saurian warriors rush forward in a loose skirmish line to ensnare and envelop the elves. Elven warriors move to guard the wounded from the geckos in the swamp, followed by one of the Elven elite.
Hold steady, warriors.
The last two elite, including the sergeant, rush up the centre.
Swiftly, plug that gap.
The geckos in the swamp rush up 12 inches, weaving through the trees and sticky mud with ease. Kalana is the final elf to activate. She advances behind her elite bodyguard and casts forth the searing white blast of the quench spell towards the Saurian warrior on a 4+, causing 6 automatic hits. The Saurian instinctively ducks behind his shield, absorbing a good portion of the spell's energy before it evaporates under the spell's power, and the Saurian warrior collapses to the ground, a charred husk. At the end of turn 1, the Elven Shadow Brothers got hammered by the Saurian ambush, and the brutal Saurian warriors are in range to fall upon the skilled but lightly armoured elves. The geckos in the swamp are now uncontested and free to move up on the flank and threaten the Elven objective. The elves activated last, so the Saurians get the first activation on the second turn, and Brassk prepares to lob Serpent Egg at the approaching Elven warriors. He intones the words of the spell, but a spike of pain from his ribs foils his concentration, and the magical energies dissipate. Unaware of their lucky escape, the Elven warriors charge the closest Saurian warrior, nimble swords darting over and around their shields.
Stick together.
With a 4+, one elf exploits a gap and slides his sword over the Saurian's defence, taking the creature's throat. It sinks, wheezing, to the ground. The elves' quick victory allows them to consolidate their position and move up to 3 inches, further opening the hole in the Saurian line. The Saurian warrior behind the rock leaps out and surprises the elite sergeant, snapping his jaws and swinging his club. Needing a 4+, the club slams into the sergeant's breastplate, breaking his guard and knocking him off his feet. Rolling a d6 and adding the number of wounds results in a 5. The elf is winded, but still alive. The elite on the flank moves over the hill to cut off the Saurian flanker.
Clever girl.
He steps forward and delivers a rising cut, needing 3+. A heavy blow with a greatsword has armour piercing 2, and the Saurian requires 6s to defend himself. The cut shears off the lower half of the Saurian's shield, but the Saurian sidesteps and avoids the blade, before returning with a downward blow from his club, needing 4+. However, the elf is already in a high guard, and the club slides off the sword with a 5+. The elf steps back with a wry grin and a nod of respect.
Impressive.
There's no honour in war, however, and the pack-hunting Saurian behind the elf falls on his distracted foe. His club goes wide, but his taloned foot lashes out and strikes the elf on the hip. Mail rings fly. The elf rolls with the strike, maintaining his feet and lashing out with his sword in a wild swing. Having already fought this round, the elf required 6s to hit, and the cut is wide as the Saurian ducks back out of reach. The Shadow Brother on the shore falls back behind the shields of the warriors and looses an arrow towards the geckos in the swamp. Requiring 4s to hit because of the gecko's camouflage, the shot is good and passes through the gecko, causing it to stumble and then fall. The Saurian warrior on the flank snarls at the greatsword wielding elf before breaking left and going for the more lightly armoured Shadow Brother. Lashing out with a club and broken shield, the Saurian requires 6s, having already fought.
That one's really cocked.
With a 1 and a 2, the broken shield throws off his balance and the strikes are wide. The Shadow Brother strikes back, needing 3s, but the Saurian backs away out of his dagger's reach. Feeling the disrupted magical energies, Kalana moves past the fighting warriors and spots the decorated Gecko Priest she duelled with earlier. Feeling his magical energies have been expended, for now, she quickly summons her own power and blasts the priest with a quench spell. Requiring 4+, the steering white blast lances out towards Brassk, and with a defence of 6+, Brask's wards quickly fail under Kalana's magical assault, and he takes a whopping 5 wounds. Brassk has the tough 3 rule, so rolling a d6 and adding 6 total wounds, a result of 9 or more is required to kill the priest. A roll of 6 is about as decisive as you can get, and Brassk falls smouldering to the ground. The blowpipe geckos in the swamp continue to advance up the flank, lining up a shot at the elven warriors through the trees. Darts puff out, but with a quality 5+, they all go wide. A shadow brother backs up after being attacked by the Saurian warrior and looses an arrow at his enemy. It's a good shot, but the Saurian catches it in the remnants of his shield. The geckos at the edge of the swamp move inland in an attempt to salvage their left flank. They throw their javelins at the back of the elven warriors, but again, at quality 5+, their javelins go wide. The elven elite steps forward over his fallen sergeant and delivers a downward slash towards the Saurian warrior with his greatsword. Distracted by the display of power from Kalana, the Saurian doesn't even attempt to defend himself, and the greatsword bites deep, felling the creature. The swamp geckos with javelins shuffle forward to the edge of the swamp and target the fallen elite sergeant. One hit is enough to take him out, but again the shots are wide. With just elven units left, the elite sergeant stands up.
Oh, my thanks.
The warriors along the swamp move up along the shore, and the final elite remains to guard the wounded. At the end of turn 2, the advantage the Saurians had gained dissolved to nothing, and the tide has very decisively turned. Lady Luck heavily favoured the Elves this round, and they are in a very dominant position going into round 3.
Come then, you barbaric cur. Clearly your bark is worse than your bite.
The Saurians get the first activation on turn 3, and will start with a Saurian warrior turning and charging Kalana Heartwale. She steps aside as the Saurian leaps towards her, jaws snapping, and it lashes out with its club. While Kalana's wards save her life, they fail to stop the attack, and the club rakes down her arm, ripping cloth and flesh. Elven warriors plunge into the swamp, shields held before them, and thrust towards the geckos. At quality 4+, they get one hit, but the gecko bats the point aside with his shield. The geckos strike back, to no effect. The elven shields block their line of attack, but the elves are forced back a step. The geckos then dive into the swamp and emerge to throw javelins at the elite elf on the shore. Shaken by the close call with the warriors, their javelins go wide. Kalana stumbles away from the attacking Saurian and attempts to cast Quench at the geckos behind the rock. The pain in her arm and the blood dripping from her fingers cloud her mind, and she fails to find her focus.
Talia's grace, that hurts.
Surprised by her appearance, the geckos quickly toss javelins towards her. But again, their aim is off, and the javelins scatter about harmlessly. The elf warriors beside her charge the Saurian warrior pressing the elven elite. Two warriors distract the beast, while the third drives his sword from the side.
Overwhelm the beast.
The Saurian, distracted by the first two, reacts too late, and the sword pierces its flank. Its breath escapes it in a gasp, and the fearsome creature feebly sinks to the ground. The elves turn and consolidate towards the objective.
That's it. Keep moving.
The blowpipe geckos continue their move up the flank and launch a volley of darts towards the elite guarding the wounded. Two darts disappear into the swamp, but one sails true and strikes the elf in the mouth. He drops in surprise and pain, spitting out the foul-tasting poison.
Oh, that's foul.
With only elf units left, the Shadow Brothers nock arrows. One sends a shaft towards the final Saurian warrior. The arrow flies true and buries itself in the base of the creature's skull. It drops without a sound. The second looses an arrow at the geckos in the swamp. The shot is poor, and it skips off the surface of the swamp harmlessly. The wounded elven elite picks himself up, pulls the dart out, and eyes the geckos angrily.
You monsters.
The elite in the centre charges around the rocky outcrop and straight into the geckos.
Insects.
He slashes out, but the geckos nimbly stay back, lunging in after the sword passes. Two of them strike the elf. elven mail shatters and the proud warrior falls to the gleeful stabbing of the victorious geckos. The elite sergeant activates. Already wounded, he eyes the reptiles up and then moves towards securing the objective. The final elven elite does the same, following the example of his sergeant. At the end of turn 3, things once again went very poorly for the Saurians. So much so that they are now considered broken. Each unit will have to make morale checks, rolling a single die to score their quality. Geckos have a quality of 5+, but they do get an extra +1 to morale checks for being fearless. So, looking for 4s, the first unit fails spectacularly and they turn tail and run. The second unit also fails. It's not going well. And finally, the geckos with blowpipes, who pass. However, they are the only unit remaining and can realistically not do a heck of a lot. So I think the Saurians will concede at this point and victory will go to the Elves. Well, that was the most one-sided game of Age of Fantasy I've played so far. The Saurians started off strong, but they very quickly hit a wall. A lot of their special abilities rely on them rolling a lot of 6s, and unfortunately the only 6s they were rolling were for wound effects. It was, however, nice for the Elves to have a lucky break for a change. If you've followed along with the channel, you'll know that the Elves have a habit of underperforming. So it was nice to see Kalana do something. With the path back to the ships clear, she just has to hope that the repairs have been completed. So let me know what you thought of the game down in the comments below, and have you tried out one-page rules yet? They are free. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I do hope that you have enjoyed the video, and we shall see you next time. Cheers!